Hey guys, Craig here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video I'm going to be telling you about the infamous escape from Alcatraz. So if you love true crime videos, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And remember to hit that bell icon so that you never miss another upload from me. And as always guys, these videos are made for educational purposes only and to create a talking point around a certain topic. I never mean any disrespect to the victims or their family members. So now that we have that out of the way, let's get into today's video. On the morning of June 12, 1962, the inmates of the Alcatraz prison woke up to a loud shrieking siren, one that they hadn't heard before. It was the escape siren. There was panic throughout the prison. 3 inmates weren't found in their cells. It seemed as if they had escaped from the inescapable Alcatraz Island and disappeared into thin air. Their escape became a legend. What happened to the 3 men is one of the biggest mysteries in American history to this day. In December of 1961, the inmates at the prison were assigned new cells. 4 of the inmates, Frank Morris, Alan West, and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, were assigned adjacent cells. All 4 of these men led a life where they were constantly in and out of jail, and whenever they were imprisoned, no matter which prison it was, they tried to escape. It was their lives. But Alcatraz is a prison that is made on an island. It's the only thing on the island. It was built so that there was no way anyone could escape. They would just end up drowning in the San Francisco Bay. Only a handful of inmates ever tried their luck trying to get out, but they'd always be shot and killed, until these 4 men decided that they were going to break out. The 4 inmates already knew each other because they had served time in the same prison in Atlanta before, so they already trusted each other. Well, enough to escape a dangerous prison together. The problem was that Alcatraz wasn't a regular prison. It was far more secure, even more secure than a regular maximum security prison. In addition to the fact that the prison itself was on an island, there was intense security all throughout the grounds. The guards would listen into every single conversations that the inmates had with their visitors, and they would even often keep an ear on the conversation between the inmates. There were several metal detectors throughout the prison, so if anybody tried to move metals or makeshift weapons around, they'd be caught immediately. And to make sure that no one slipped away, there were 12 head counts throughout the day, and even more added at random times throughout the night. And to make matters worse, the inmates weren't really allowed to move around. They got no exercise. So even if they came into the prison lean, muscular and fit, it didn't take long for all that to disappear, leaving them weak, so that there's no chance that if they made it past the prison walls, that they would be able to make it through San Francisco Bay. This meant that if the men were to actually pull off an escape, it had to be an airtight plan. So Frank Morris took it upon himself to think of one. It's important to mention here though, that Morris's IQ was extremely high, ranking in the top 2% of everybody in the US. So if anybody could put their mind to it and make an impossible escape work, it was him. Morris's plan was to use the vents. Now, prison vents aren't really designed the same way as regular vents. They're a lot smaller, big enough to let air through for a human to survive, but small enough that nobody could crawl through them. So they couldn't just use them as they were. They had to figure out a way to make them bigger. Now, that was the first challenge. It wasn't easy to move metal around the prison, so they couldn't just use anything. It had to be things that they could move around without raising suspicion. Their tool of choice ended up being spoons from the canteen, a couple of saw blades that they found on the floors, and a drill that they made from a random spare part scavenged throughout the prison. It was the first step of a 6-month journey to freedom. They used their makeshift weapons to slowly break away the walls of the vents. Slowly isn't a figure of speech here. They had to dig enough so that the vents could fit a full-grown man and be big enough for him to move around. But you can't just be silent and go unnoticed while breaking through concrete. So not only did they have the proper tools, they also had to be totally silent without being caught. So to do this, Morris would play his musical instrument in the time that they had to dig. The noise from the instrument was loud enough that it drowned out the sounds of digging. And since there was nothing else to do in prison, none of the other inmates or guards were bothered by the music. He could play it for hours without anybody thinking that it was anything out of the ordinary. As the men continued to dig through the vents, they eventually got bigger and bigger. It was progress, but it was also a problem. The vents got big enough that if a guard looked at it, he'd be able to tell that it had been tampered with. So they had to cover up their tracks. They did so by making paper mache duck grills, made out of magazine pages from the prison library. A guard that had to do 12 or more head counts a day didn't have enough time to really look at every single corner of every inmate's room. The fake grills were convincing enough that from afar they didn't raise suspicion. So the vents in their cells led to an unguarded utility corridor that ran behind the inmates' cells. It was small, but large enough that the men could use it to move around. At this point they had figured out how they were going to leave, but still needed to figure out what they were going to do once they got out. Given the fact that the food they were eating severely lacked nutritional value, and that they weren't really getting any exercise, they knew that they just couldn't swim to shore, that they needed a boat, or a raft. Given their circumstances, they couldn't just build an entire boat. They had to make a makeshift raft. So here arose another problem. In order to make the raft, they had to escape to the roof of the prison at night. There were guards outside the cells that patrolled the prison throughout the night. If they were just missing from their cells, they would have been noticed immediately, and the whole plan would have fallen apart before it had even begun. They needed stand-ins to take their place while they worked on the raft throughout the night. Prisons don't really have extra people that you can just bribe to stay in your cell, and they didn't trust anyone else there, so they couldn't use an actual person. So Morris came up with the idea of using decoys. The men began to collect human hair from all over the prison and cut some of their own hair too. They used several bars of soap mixed with cement and moulded heads that looked exactly like them. They even went as far as to add eyebrows and eyelashes and other details using hair and pens, so the decoy heads would look convincing. Every night when they had to go to the roof to work on their raft, they propped the heads up on their pillows and put the sheets on top of them. To a guard passing by, it would look like it was just another inmate trying to sleep through the night, when in reality they had climbed the pipes in the corridor and were building a raft to get out unnoticed. Throughout the months that they were working on their great escape, they stole 50 raincoats, cut them up and used them to make the main raft. But Morris wasn't just going to rely on the raft alone. He knew that the waters in San Francisco Bay were rough, and that there was a chance that the raft might not hold up for very long. So he thought of another plan. Using the same raincoats, he created life jackets. So even if the raft sinks, they would stay afloat. And with the help of the life jackets, they would be able to swim the 2 miles to shore. Somehow, Morris had thought of everything. Once everything was in place, they picked a date, June 11th. The plan was to wait until the final head count of the night, which would usually take place around 9:30 p.m. Since the guards would have seen them in their cells, exactly where they were supposed to be, they wouldn't really have a reason to go check up on the four men in particular until the daytime. As for the patrol guards, the dummy heads had gotten them through the months without being noticed. All they needed was one more night. So they did what they always would, propped the heads up on the pillows and tucked them in, and crawled out of the vents. Well, everybody except Alan West. Alan West wasn't as gifted as Morris. His circumstances didn't help either. He had dropped out of school in 8th grade and wasn't a particularly smart guy. While everyone else was putting their paper mache on the vents, West tried to make the escape route and used cement on the vents instead. The other three men were able to just take off the paper mache with their hands easily, but when West tried to get out, he found that the cement that he had already used had hardened. Months of digging was rendered useless because he couldn't get out of the vent. He still had hope though. He dug again, and since the cement was newly hardened, he was able to dig and break it, and eventually got through. But when he got to the roof, he found that the others had already left without him. One of the most unbelievable things is that around 10 p.m, when the men reached the roof and were possibly taking their rafts with them, there was a loud thud that the guards had to have heard. But since it was late at night, and since they didn't hear anything else, they just disregarded it as noise that probably came from the wind, and moved on. Had they not, they would have caught the men on the roof red-handed. From the roof, the men used a pipe and slid down it, while holding onto the raft and wearing the life jackets. Once they got on the ground, they cut through several barbed wire fences and got out. So the men made their escape totally unnoticed and disappeared into the fog on their way till Angel Island. It wasn't until the next morning at the morning head counts that the guards noticed that the three inmates were missing. The prison was searched, and when they got to West's cell, he panicked. He knew that if they went through his cell, they would find that his vent was dug through too. He had to do something to get off the hook, so he came clean and told the guards everything. He told them all about how they had dug through the vents and made a raft and life jackets. He even told them what the plan was once they got to Angel Island. The men were going to steal clothes and change out of their prison uniforms. They were then going to steal a car and get out of the San Francisco area and make their getaway. Over the course of the next 10 days, the police and the military did extensive searches throughout the area. Land, sea and air were all looked at, but there was no sign of the three men whatsoever. The only things that were ever recovered were a paddle found about 20 miles away from Angel Island shore, and in the same area, some workers on a nearby boat found a wallet wrapped in plastic. Inside, they found names, addresses and photos of the relatives of the Anglin brothers, making it obvious that it belonged to one of the brothers. By June 21st, pieces of the raincoats were found on the beach near the Golden Gate Bridge. The authorities couldn't find the three men or the raft. FBI officials announced that they were pretty sure that the men had drowned in the San Francisco Bay. They didn't believe that a makeshift raft would have been enough to hold them up for long, never mind reach the shore. At least, that's what they told the public. For decades, the authorities looked for Morris and the Anglin brothers. Even though there were several leads, all of them would eventually go cold. In 2018, a letter was found that said, "My name is John Anglin. I escaped from Alcatraz in June of 1962 with my brother Clarence and Frank Morris. I am 83 years old and I'm in bad shape. I have cancer. Yes, we made it that night, but barely. The letter even mentioned that Morris had already died in 2008 and Clarence died in 2011. It was a cry for help. He added in the letter, "If you announce on TV that I will be promised to first go to jail for no more than a year and I will get medical attention, I will write back and let you know exactly where I am. Please note that this is no joke." The FBI sent the letter over to forensics to find out if the letter had any of John's DNA or if the handwriting matched his. But unfortunately, the results were inconclusive. To this day, the 3 men who escaped from Alcatraz prison in 1962 remain missing. So guys, that was the story of the infamous escape from Alcatraz. I'm really keen to know what you guys think happened to the 3 men that escaped. Let me know in the comment section below. One last thing guys, I ran a wee competition over on my Instagram where that if you subscribed to my channel and sent me a screenshot, I would give you a wee mention in a video. So here are a list of those people and their Instagram handles. I just want to say a massive thank you for all the support that you guys are giving me and the channel. And don't forget that if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And hit that bell icon so you never miss another upload. And I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye.